Yep.
Good morning, everyone.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Reqlogic. I appreciate you joining us today on our quarterly Dynamics SL User Group webinar. Today, we're going to talk about a procurement from the standpoint of a requisition all the way through invoicing. And we're going to discuss a web-based front end that will allow us to initiate a requisition all the way through routing approvals, through receiving, through invoicing, and ultimately payment to the vendor. And we're going to do that through using a product called Reqlogic. Sue Hilko is with us, and she's going to show us, give us a short demo of the Reqlogic software. It is a web-based application that has mobile capabilities as well as desktop functionality. They'll help us. So Sue has been with Reqlogic and in the procurement industry for over 20 years. So welcome, Sue. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you begin the presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. I am going to share my screen and go through a couple of slides. Can you see my screen, Rick?
I can.
Okay, great. So I promise not to PowerPoint you to death because it's one of my pet peeves. So here we go. Reqlogic, our tagline is powering efficiency and cost control. So as Rick mentioned, we are an end-to-end e-procurement system providing powerful automation. Most companies we work with are on paper systems today, or a system they're unhappy with, but the majority are on paper. So to automate that system and streamline it for you with workflow functionality, and of course your ultimate goal here is to reduce costs and increase the value of the software. So we're a mature product. We have over 500 active customers globally. And we were first introduced into the market in 2001, and we were actually written by a former Solomon, predecessor to SL, of course, developer. Along with our product to augment your support provided by NexusTek is support from Reqlogic. So that's included with your annual enhancement. And our support team is excellent, and they average over 12 years of experience with our product. As Rick mentioned, the flow will be from requisition to creation of a purchase order, then receiving and invoices covers the full e-procurement cycle. We are a web-based application, as Rick mentioned. However, we are installed wherever your Dynamics SL is installed. So we provide real-time integration into Dynamics SL. So for instance, we're reading your SL vendor tables, GL accounts, projects, payments, so on and so forth. And our roadmap does include upgrades. So what that means to you is when you are ready to upgrade your Dynamics SL product, we guarantee that our product will be tested and certified to run with those future upgrades. Our out-of-the-box, I call them configuration tools rather than customization tools. They allow you to adapt your business processes to personalize the entry screens, the workflow, of the system so that you don't need to change your business processes if you don't want to, as is the case with other off-the-shelf products. We do have a complete audit trail visible at any time, so date and time stamps for everything that happens to a document from the time it is created until the time it passes over to SL, and I'll show you that today in our demo. we do have 4 different areas. We have requisitions, we have invoices, we do have expense capability, and we also have timesheet entry. However, timesheet entry is only applicable if you are using SL projects, and then it will allow you to enter time against those SL projects. So with that, as I promised, that's it for the slides. We'll go directly into Reqlogic. So let me type in my login here, and we'll begin. So first of all, there's a login screen, of course, and you can use Windows authentication here, and today I'm logging into our system as Rex Baker, and Rex will be the primary requester in our system today. This is what's known as the home page of Reqlogic, and I can get to this home page at any time by clicking on the logo in the upper left-hand corner, and of course we can change this to your logo. Each user can determine to add 2 KPIs or key performance indicators to their home page, and you can have any number of those. The most important part of the home page here is this middle section here, because it allows you quick entry to all of your recent transactions and provides you a snapshot of where they are in the process. So not submitted, routing, purchase orders have been created, these have been approved, the last date that someone touched it, so you know exactly what happened to it. Up in the upper right-hand corner, we have 5 quick entry buttons. Those are to allow you accessibility to functions that you would frequently use, as opposed to having to go to the menu and the drop-down and choose what it is you want to do. So we'll begin at the beginning with a requisition. So this is what's known as the header of the requisition screen. Now I'll begin by creating a new requisition. And as I mentioned in my little slide presentation, we wanted to allow you the flexibility to adapt our product to meet your business processes and requirements. So we do that in a number of ways. The first way is to hide fields. So if you do not use SL projects, then you probably will hide these 2 fields as they relate. If you do not create your requisitions or purchase orders for one vendor only, then you might want to hide the vendor in the header portion. What it does here is auto-populate the same vendor onto every line item for companies that do create a requisition by either project or by vendor. So all I need to do here, these are my required fields that are highlighted in blue, and as you can see, most of them have defaulted in, so all I need to do here is type in a description. So I'll type in, I'm going to buy some supplies for my 350 project. And you do have the ability to add 3 different types of notes. General notes stay here. Notes to vendor will be sent over to SL, and notes to buyer go to your purchasing agent if applicable, and they can be included on purchase orders. You also have unlimited attachments, and once that's done, you're ready to say, what do you want to purchase today? So I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy some toner. Now, anywhere you see a little lookup window, that's a drill down. And what you're drilling into is contingent upon what field it is you're drilling from. So, for example, here, you're going to drill into the SL chart of accounts. Here, you're going to drill into either the SL inventory files, if applicable, and you're utilizing them. And if not, you can utilize the Reqlogic catalog. Now, the benefit of utilizing the Reqlogic catalog is that you can default in a number of fields. So you can choose to search on any line across the gray bar, and anywhere you see this gray bar in Reqlogic, we can add fields to this gray bar if you would like some other sort criteria. And you have your qualifiers here. So I'll say item ID contains tone, apply the filter. It will give me back anything that has those 3 letters in it. Now, if I just wanted to type it, if I know what it is, then I can begin to type it and eliminate that lookup. Now, you notice that when I opened up the pop-up window, some of these fields were highlighted, or items were highlighted in green. Those are my favorites. This is defined by user, so items that you personally would purchase on a regular basis, you would probably want to add to your favorite. You can add an item to your favorites by clicking on the star. If I open the star, it gives me only my favorite items. So my toner, let's say that this, now you'll notice that when I chose this was a Reqlogic catalog item, and there are only 2 required fields, description and quantity. So again, if your business process is such that you have a purchasing department, you don't want your requester to decide who it is they're purchasing from, then we designed this field so you could just type a description. You don't even have to choose an item, and you could just enter in a quantity. So we'll say we're going to buy 10 of those toner cartridges, and I need to fill in probably beneficial to fill in a required by date. And if applicable, I can also choose a project. So I said it was for this 350 project, so I'll choose that project. Now this drill down, of course, is drilling into your SL project tables if applicable. And of course, the vendor is already in SL. I'm drilling here and I have the same favorite capability. So task here are all the tasks associated with this project, and I'll just choose one of them. Now, another way we allow you to configure the screen is to add user-defined fields. So this is an example here of a user-defined field, and you can add 10 in the header and 14 down here in the line item portion of the screen. So this is an example of what we call a dimension field. A dimension field has a table behind it. So when I was demoing previously, the company had contracts. So they wanted the capability to say, in addition to the project or in place of the project, tie it to this contract. I've also set it up for events. It's a simple way for people to track purchases against a particular event. So behind this, you can build a table, and then you can have them choose which contract this is applicable to, if desired. Now I need to change the GL account because when I initially put it in, it did not have a project associated with it. Now this can be done automatically so that it defaults in when a project is selected, but I don't have my demo system set up that way, so I'm just going to choose an account associated with a project. Again, same notes down here on the bottom of the screen, as well as attachments. So once the line is complete, I have the option of saving it or saving it and adding another line. Now I'm going to save it. And once I do, I have some options. Edit, delete, copy the line, or this little $ sign here will provide me a drill down. drill down into the project budget if you're using SL projects, and in addition, the GL budget if you have a GL budget set up in SL. This will give you a lookup. And if you go over budget, you'll have a little, you'll have a little red triangle here indicating that it's over budget. Now my next line on my requisition, I'm going to add from what we call punch out. Now punch out allows you to go out to a vendor site, an online site, and purchase from that online site. So I would say probably about 90 to 95% of our customers are currently using this, because everybody buys from office supplies from Staples or Office Max or one of the other office supplies, as well as Amazon, and some companies, depending on what your business type is, would also buy from maybe a medical supplier or a different type. So in my demo system, I have CDW. So what I'm doing is I'm going out to the CDW site. And what this is normally you'll set up a subset of the full site, because you don't want someone buying a $10,000 desk. So you would have a subset. So I'm going to search for a laptop case. Now this is another way that you can control your spending by providing only a subset of items for people to select from. So I'm going to choose this laptop case here, and I'm going to say I want to purchase 3 of those. And I'll add them to my cart, just like you do on any other website that you're purchasing on. Now I would continue to fill up my cart with everything that I wanted to purchase. In the interest of time, I'll just choose one, and now we're checking out. But instead of paying, as you do on most websites that you're on, I'm transferring my shopping cart. So now you'll notice an additional line has been added to my requisition, and it's pulling in all the information from the website. So the complete description, the vendor part number, how many I said I wanted to purchase. Now GL account, we can mask this in a number of ways. So for instance, if you have a segment applicable to departments, it can automatically default in. And an inordinate amount of time is spent by AP people in correcting GL accounts. So the more conformity we can add to this, the better for you. So we can default this in a number of ways. This one happens to be tied to the item that was selected. So once this line item is complete, we'll assume that it's the last item on my requisition, and we're now ready to submit it into the approval process. So I'm going to submit it, say OK, and it's successfully submitted. But oh no, when it's submitted, it tells me that line 1 is over budget. And here's that little red triangle that I said would be indicated when you went over budget. So now we have 2 tabs that become important. The routing tab, based upon the approval process that you have set up. And if we have time, we'll take a look at it, but in the interest of time, we'll just talk about it a little bit. It's extremely flexible. It's one of our greatest strengths. So dollar amount is very common to approve. Now the reason it's sent to Andy is because my routing policy says if it's over a certain amount, it goes to my manager, Rex's manager. Rex's manager, as set up in the system, is Andy Hobbs. The reason it went to William Kane is because it has an IT item on it. And it's the next step in this routing policy says if an item class of IT is on it, send it to William Kane, because he's the IT manager, and he wants to know when someone purchases something against his budget. The final step here is Alex, and it went to Alex because Alex is identified as the project manager in SL for that 350 retrofit project that I selected. So the status tab is my little audit trail that I talked about. So this is going to tell me exactly where this is in the routing process. So now the first approver is Andy Hobbs. There's 3 ways for Andy to approve. The first way is via email. So once this document is routed, an email goes out to the first approver. The email template is completely modifiable by you. This is what it looks like in our demo system. It lists everything that's being purchased, and it also has a hot link to the particular document that is there. Now, you can set it up in your system that all you need to do is, as an approver, is reply to the email. You set up a code word, such as approve or reject. You type that code word, and you send that off, and Reqlogic will mark it approved or rejected as appropriate. You can also approve or reject by set it up for line item approval and reject. It would just be approve line 1 and 2, reject line 3 and 4. So that's the first way you can approve. The second way you can approve is via a mobile device. So if I log out here and I log in as Mr. Hobbs, you will see that when I look at his review queue, here's the requisition we just created. And he can add a comment. He can approve or reject. Now, via a mobile device, I cannot approve or reject by line item, only the entire document. It's the only way that I cannot approve by line item. So I'll mark this approved, and we'll go back to the browser or web-based version of Reqlogic. I'll log out of here and log in as William Kane, the next approver, and show you what it looks like from within. Approval looks like from within. Now notice Andy approved it. It's already been passed to the next approver, which is William Kane. I have a quick approval button, but I want to show you some additional functionality. Now notice only the second item is sent to William for approval, and he either checks to approve it or unchecks it to reject it. And that's because in my routing policy, I only said William needs to approve IT items. Now I have another tab here called the approval process. I can send a question to anyone else in the system. I simply type the question, choose the person, send the question. They get a notification, and they will, on their home page, see that they have a question. They'll come in, they'll type the answer, they'll have a respond button. Both the question and the answer will be added to the status tab. And it will be rerouted back to whoever asked the question so that they can approve or reject it. I can forward it to any other approver in the system. I can delegate it. So I can delegate on the fly if I think somebody else needs to take a look at it. Tied to this forward is your out of office. So similar to the way Outlook operates today, you say from May 31st through June 7th, I will be unavailable. Please delegate my approval to Sally instead of myself, and it will turn on and turn off and delegate as appropriate the same way your Outlook system does. If you're second approver or higher, then you can return to any previous approver. So I will just approve this, and I'll say review completed. And now I'm going to log out of the system, and I wear a lot of hats in this demo, so I'm going back to Rex Baker. Sometimes I get confused which hat I'm wearing. So, oops. So we're going back in as Rex Baker. He doesn't have a password. And we'll log in. And now this is the first document on my home page, and if we take a look at it, and we go to that status tab, you will see that both William and Andy has approved it, and Alex Supervisor is the next approver. Now, rather than going through that again, I have already sent one over. So what happens now? Well, when the final approver approves this document, it's sent to your purchasing department. So I'm going to log out now and pretend that it's fully approved, and we're going to go to Fred Beyer, who in my demo system is my purchasing agent. You notice that the KPIs change because they're defined by user. And I'm going to open up the buyer screen. And you'll notice here I have a number of filters. So if you have more than one purchasing agent, you can route to them accordingly depending on how your company is set up. You have the most common filter that's used is vendor or item or project. Project often because there's a timeline and there's an urgency with purchasing supply for a particular project. Then choosing vendor or item ID would allow you to consolidate and take advantage of discounts that you may have contracted with a particular vendor. Most companies check these two boxes, one site per PO and generate one PO per vendor. So here's a listing of all of the requisitions that have gone through the approval process, and all the required fields have been entered, and I simply, as the purchasing agent, check the box, and we can default them to be checked if you want, and I create the purchase order. So now all selected items will be processed, and this is the two purchase orders that were created because there's two different vendors, 212 and 213. So we can send them via email, we can send them, print them and snail mail them, or in the case of punch out or catalog purchases, we can send them via CXML. So I'm going to print one of them for you just to show you what our particular form looks like. Now this is free form. This is the demo purchase order. And this is a form that you personally design. And so you can format this to be any way you want it to be. It can look exactly as your purchase order looks today. Now, along with these purchase orders, you can email any attachments, or you can email those notes to buyer if you want. A lot of people have disclaimers on the bottom of their purchase orders, so you could add that disclaimer if you wanted to, or on a separate page. And if you have multiple companies, you can also have multiple different purchase order forms. So that's what a purchase order looks like. And now if I go over to FL, and I open up the purchase order screen and do a search on purchase order, you'll see 212 and 213 are the two purchase orders that were just created. They're already written into the SL table. So here's number 12. If I had added a note to vendor, it would appear here in this note screen. We have added an additional button here called Reqlogic Files. And the Reqlogic Files will, if any attachments are attached from the requisition screen, they will appear here. You'll be able to open them and view them. The other tab is your routing tab. So your audit trail has been passed over to be read from SL. So be sure this is allocated to the accounting department. You see all comments that have been typed. You see the date and time stamp. You see when the purchase orders were created, and a complete audit trail is visible. So whether you're in SL or you're in Reqlogic, you can see all attachments, all notes, and the complete audit trail. So that's SL. And now we'll go back to Reqlogic, and I'm going to log out, and I'm going to log in as Rex Baker one more time. So what's the next step? Once that purchase order is created, everything is good, I'm going to receive that document. Now you don't, in Solomon, in SL, you do need to receive. You have the choice of receiving from SL or receiving from Reqlogic. Many companies choose to utilize the Reqlogic receiving. It's a simple process. Again, I have filters. So if I just wanted to see everything for advanced, I could select just the vendor. Now, even though you may not have tangible physical inventory, most companies today want to know that the item has been received, because if you ordered that laptop, you want to know that it's received before you actually pay for it. So this is the receiving screen. I've chosen only to show me advanced. I have the quantity requested and the quantity remaining. So if there had been a prior receipt on this, I would have seen it. So I'm going to say we're receiving 6 of these rather than the 12. I will save it, and that's all there is to receiving. So what's the next step in the process? It's invoicing. So now we go down to the PO invoice. Now the nice thing you'll notice about Reqlogic is our screens are very similar. So once you learn one, your learning curve is diminished because of that similarity in the screen. So now we'll choose to create a PO invoice. So I need a description, and I need to choose the vendor, of course. And I'll choose this advanced again. I need to enter an invoice number. And once I do that and save it, I get a little pop-up. And my pop-up gives me the purchase orders that are out there for advance that I haven't invoiced against yet. Oops. I guess I have one in routing for that. So let's choose a different one. And what it's doing now, it's filling in all the line items. Now, if you had requested 10 and you only received 5, only those 5 will show here. So all you need to do is match. You don't need to retype those items in again. Now, how can I get invoices into the system? There's a couple of ways. I can type it in just as I did now. I can have my vendors email it to me. The heading will be created based upon the email address that you have put in SL for this vendor. It will default in that vendor. You can do OCR. We do have OCR capability, or you can scan them in right from Reqlogic. It will automatically attach a copy of the invoice to this document. So if we wanted to attach a copy this way, the manual way, we could just go in. We would have to have a scanned copy of the invoice available. We attach it and we upload it, and now we have that document. Now once this is passed over to SL, once the final approver approves it, the voucher is created, and that completes the process all the way through the procurement. So we quickly went through requisition to a purchase order to the invoice, and of course now the payment will be made out of SL. Now if I open up the voucher screen, in SL, you'll see the same capability that we saw in the purchase. You would see the complete audit trail on the little special tab. You would also see the copy of this invoice, and you would see any notes that were entered. So I'll submit this, and it'll go into a routing process. Now, normally most companies will have a very simplified routing process for this. Maybe the AP person, which is the way I have it here, who's Cindy Danis, who happens to be AP, as one last check before it's passed over to SL. Now, it is passed over to SL as an unposted batch because we want to allow you the capability to edit that one last time before you post it into SL. Now, if I go back to the requisition entry, and I have previously put in a requisition that I have completely passed through the system. So if we go down now and we take a look at the status tab for this, you'll see Andy asked a question, are the logo pens for the event or general sales? Rex responded, he said, they're for general sales. Andy said, thanks, I'll allocate to sales. Then William approved from his mobile, and he said, okay to purchase, laptop for new sales hire. He'll configure and add the serial number to the asset. And then it went to our buyer, and he created 3 purchase orders because there were 3 different vendors. Then it was received in multiple different receipts. And each one is stamped on the status tab. Then the AP vouchers were created. I entered the invoice was fully approved, went over to SL, and it stamped the voucher on the status tab. Then I paid the document from SL, and here the check numbers that paid the appropriate purchase orders are on the status tab as well. So this full audit trail will also appear on that purchase order from within SL. Each time it stamps it, it passes it over. Now, if you wanted to enter the invoice in SL instead of Reqlogic, you do have the capability to do that via, and it will still stamp the voucher number onto this tab within Reqlogic. So we have a couple other things under requisitions, which are search and duplicate. Now, this is also available for invoices. So this is really a multi-purpose screen. You can use it for a template, say. So if there's office supplies that you would purchase on a regular basis, or if you're redundantly purchasing for a particular project. So again, you have filters. If you want to see every requisition you created for a project previously, you could select that project and apply the filter. I'm just going, you can do a date range. I'm going to apply the filter. So one way is to copy. So here's a listing of all my previous requisitions, and you'll notice they're all in various stages. I can just copy a requisition by simply clicking the copy button. It will open up the requisition screen and give me an exact duplicate. You can leave, if you're setting up a template, I would advise you to leave the prices blank so that you don't have an error because prices tend to change over time. So here's the copy button to copy the whole requisition. And if you just want one line item from that requisition, then you just check the box. And you can check boxes from various requisitions. And then when you open the requisition screen, you'll get a little sign in the bottom that says you have items on your clipboard. Do you wish to paste? And you can just paste them in. So that's one way, the copy. The other way to use this screen is to say, show me all of my requisitions that are routing. And you can do it by requester, or you can leave that blank and see them all. And when I apply the filter, it shows me everything that's routing. You can use this for, as I said, for invoices and for requisitions and for expenses. The other thing, of course, everybody wants to know, as I say, systems are valuable, but if they can't provide me the information that I want in the form that I want, then how valuable are they? So we have a number of reports for you. I'm going to show you the requisition transaction report. Again, if I want to see just a certain type of purchase type, or I want to see a date range, I can do that once I apply the filter. Now we have two types of reports, right? I have a formatted report, which I'm going to show you first. And this report allows you drill down capability to the actual document. We also have an Excel. You can choose Excel in the drop-down box, and then it will open up an Excel report, which I ran previously, and it will dump the same information into Excel, which provides you the ability, of course, to slice and dice, do your pivot tables, your analysis, whatever you want to do on that particular report. That takes us through the, recently, through the full requisition. Now you also have the ability to enter invoices. The screen looks identically the same. That are not applicable to purchase orders. So your taxes, your rent, anything that your utility bills, your phone bills, anything that you would do on a regular basis, that might be something you want to set up for search and duplicate. We do have vendor requests, so you can request a new vendor. We have recently added a vendor portal, which allows you flexibility to, this is now, I just came in as a vendor, so I can have conversations, I can track, and I am logging in as advanced. Oops, wrong company. In addition to my hats, I have unlimited companies in here, so I have conversations, which I can have with them. I started one here. It talks about the, it says we don't have an item you requested in stock. So this is one way to keep all your communication with your vendor in one place. And these can be started by you to your vendor or by your vendor to you. Right now I'm looking at it from the vendor perspective. They have a document library. So it's a nice place to store all of your documents pertaining to one vendor. So right here I've stored sketches and specs for a custom part. I've stored a certificate of insurance. You can store your W-9s, whatever it is, your contracts, all in the vendor library. The vendor, you can send a communication to the vendor saying, I need a current insurance certificate, please upload. The vendor can come here and upload it themselves, eliminating that email or decreasing those inordinate amount of emails we receive every day. And the vendor also has some reports. They have a received, not invoiced report. So they know if that invoice hasn't been, it's been sent to you, but you haven't received their invoice yet. You have an open purchase order report, PO analysis, and so on. Now, the vendor portal is fairly new. It's about 2 months old, and we will continue to release additions to this. And when we do, there'll be additional functionality and reports added. Now, all of these reports are also available from within Reqlogic. So if I go back to Reqlogic, there's one last thing to show you, and that's our expense entry. And I've added an expense report previously because I knew we would be pressed for time. And you'll notice again, very similar to the invoice and the requisition screen. And here we have an expense line. So all of these expenses are stored in the Reqlogic catalog. And you can choose the expense, enter in the amount, and you're off. Now these three fields down here are user-defined fields. It's another way to use user-defined fields. Purpose of travel is common. If it's mileage, you might want to know where they drove from to. And if it's entertainment, you'd want to know who's in attendance at that event. You can attach your receipt here. And of course, if you type a voucher note and you pay your employees through through vouchers in SL, then those notes, of course, would be attached to that voucher. So that's a line item. You have the same capability. You also have the over budget. If it's going over budget, you can tie your expenses to a project. I didn't expose the fields in the demo, but you can. And the most common way to enter expenses is here through the mobile device. So I can enter expenses and create a new expense report, or I can see that expense report we just looked at from within the web-based version of Reqlogic, and I can add an expense. So the thing I like to do is, in the actual app that will appear on your phone or your tablet, you'll have another button in the middle here that says Take Photo. When you take a photo, it automatically attaches it here. I can't demo that here because I'm demoing from my laptop and not a device. But basically, you see what happens. Travel to Chicago, this is the amount already been added to it. I just choose the type of expense that it is. I type in the description, and I then go down and enter in the amount of the expense. Now, on your expenses, you can have per diem. You can have caps for a particular item. So you can have a cap for a meal. You can have a cap for a daily expense. There you go. You choose your project and your category or task if you want to, and then you save it. Once I save it, if I go back to Reqlogic and I refresh the screen, you will see that it's already been added to the web-based version of Reqlogic. So that pretty much takes us through our time. I wanted to allow a few minutes for you to ask some questions, and I will be happy to answer those for you.
Great. Thanks, Sue. Appreciate the demo. Anyone, if you have any questions, you can enter them into the question section of the webinar. A couple of things that I just wanted to kind of give the audience, Sue. You know, from a kind of a technical perspective, Reqlogic can be deployed either inside or outside the firewall. And basically what that means is if you deploy it inside the firewall, folks will have to, you know, VPN or be within your, you know, your domain to create, you know, and work within Reqlogic. Or we can expose it outside the firewall, which then allows them to be really anywhere through a secured, you know, SSL cert that you could hit the site from anywhere and not through a, you know, just a browser and not be connected to a VPN. So it's like a typical website. You can also do expense reports, obviously, as Sue mentioned. The nice thing is, you know, what we're hearing in the kind of the marketplace now is folks are wanting the ability to, you know, use their mobile device, snap the picture, and not have to carry receipts around. So that's nice that you're able to go ahead and, you know, snap a picture, and then, you know, with your you know, with your phone, and then you're able to then, you know, either do it at that particular moment if you have time to set up the expense item, or you can come back in later. So that's a real nice advantage. You can also do, you know, check requests. So if that situation arises, you can do those sorts of things and have, you know, different routing policies attached to that. So maybe those types of transactions don't require, maybe they only require one level of approval, those sorts of things. You do have email box monitoring. So with OCR, so OCR has the capability, it is an add-on to Reqlogic, but it has the ability to monitor email boxes so that when invoices come in, they can automatically be scanned and routed, which again just helps with the efficiency process. And then decentralized receiving is another one. So for, the procurement process of, especially if you have folks in multiple locations that are ordering, the receiving can also take place in those various locations. And that way, the packing slips and all that doesn't necessarily have to come to the centralized or the corporate office for the receiving aspects. Now it can. It's just that you have the option not to do that. You can do this decentralized receiving. It also helps with fewer SL licenses. So for the folks that are in Reqlogic, you don't have to have a SL license. So that's another reason why we like to use the receiving aspects of Reqlogic, the invoicing and those sorts of things, so that folks can really do their work as it relates to the finances and procurement stuff all within Reqlogic, so that way we don't have to provide an SL license as well and teach them how to operate in both the SL system and the Reqlogic system. So it helps from a training perspective as well. And then again, the audit trail provides multiple individuals the ability to see the information, as Sue was showing you about the approval, and then of course the invoice being paid and so on and so forth. So if an account manager is talking to a vendor, or somebody else is talking to a vendor outside of, say, AP or purchasing, they can have and look up that information and have that discussion and allow them to to convey that information, versus having to contact the AP department necessarily, or the PO department. It just helps if they have access to that information, they can maybe answer those questions without having to involve the other departments. So that's a nice plus too. So.
Hi, Rick, it's Andrea.
Sorry about that.
She got back
Sorry
on.
about that,
Okay,
Andrea. I'm back.
Nice. I do have a few questions here to present.
Okay.
Okay, we have one. We do not have a purchasing department. Can we still create a PO? How does that work? I think you went through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So in the routing policies, which we didn't have a chance to cover, but the routing policies, you have the option. You see you can set up unlimited. I have a basic routing policy. As the last line of the routing policy, you can type auto create PO. And when you do that, it circumvents going over to a purchasing department, and it will auto create the PO upon the last approver approving the document.
Great. The other question is, can invoices be scanned into your system?
Yes, we do have two different capabilities there. So you can use the OCR capability, which will allow you to scan the document in, correct any characters that weren't read properly, and then automatically create that invoice with a copy of the invoice attached within within Reqlogic. Or we do have this capability here, which allows you to scan in. The document will appear in this screen here. You will need to type in the information, and then it will be created in the invoice screen.
Okay, great. And another one, what happens if the vendor I want to purchase from is not in the SL system?
Okay, well, if the vendor that you want to purchase from is not in the SL system, we do have the capability to create those vendors on the fly from Reqlogic, and they will be written into the SL table. Now, the other nice thing about that is we have the capability under the vendor portal. We have added the capability to add a routing process to that. So someone would come in here, and they would just leave the vendor ID blank, actually, because that's usually created by the AP person when you want to give the ID. Just type in the name and any information. You could make these fields required, so that you have all the information you need with the particular vendor, and you would submit it into an approval process. So if you're collecting insurance or a document, or you're collecting a W-9 or any kind of information, again, remember they can be stored in the document section of the vendor portal. So whatever routing policy you determine for your vendor approval, usually the last person in that approval will be an AP person, and they'll make sure they have all the documents, all the correct fields are identified, such as vendor class, and once the last approver approves, that vendor is automatically written into the SL vendor table. So that's part of our real-time integration. If you don't want an approval process and you just want that vendor written into the SL table on the fly so you can move forward, you don't have, your approval process can have no steps and it can just be created automatically.
Great. One more question. What is the cost of Reqlogic?
So the cost of Reqlogic is contingent upon a couple of things, and you would get that cost from Rick because our product is sold through our partners. And but I can give you a range, and basically it's the functionality that you need to purchase. So in other words, do you only want to use requisitions? Do you only want to use expenses? And then the number of users that will be utilizing the system. So, but don't get frightened, because unlike your SL users, our Reqlogic users only start at $175 each. Now, we also have a site license, and that includes full functionality of the product. So the range, the modular starts at 10,000 plus your users, and then the site license. So your range is going to be somewhere in the 10 to 25, I would say, and of course depending on the number of users that you have utilizing them, and then of course you have your implementation charges. Now, in addition, as I mentioned, we do provide unlimited support. That's part of your 20% enhancement fee. That will be your only fee annually. The purchase of our software, you would purchase it outright, and then you would own it.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
It can vary greatly, just due to just to elaborate a little bit on what Sue said. It really depends on the functionality that you're looking to do, because requisitions can stand alone, and say invoices and not do expenses and timesheets and all those sorts of things. So it really just depends on what you need. And then the user licenses are named users, so it's the people, the number of individuals that are using the system that are also in the routing policies and things like that. So that's all part of the implementation process that we that we design and determine the number of people that we need, and then obviously the corresponding licensing requirements associated with that. So it's and unfortunately it's not a clear-cut answer, but Sue kind of gave a range. So that's gives you an idea of the ballpark you're playing in.
I have no more questions for you right now.
Well, great. Well, thanks everyone for attending. Appreciate your time today. As Andrew said earlier, we're recording this, so it will be available for viewing later. But Sue, we appreciate your time today. Andrew, I appreciate your time today, and everybody that attended. Hope everybody has a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.